It was late in the afternoon, and the sun had begun to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Emily, a young single mother, was driving home after a long day at work. Her little car wasn't fancy, but it was reliable enough to take her from one place to another. As she drove along the quiet road, she thought about her son waiting for her at home. Dinner needed to be made, homework needed to be checked, and the evening was already slipping away. She sighed, a little tired but determined as always. Up ahead, something caught her attention. On the side of the road, just a few meters ahead, she noticed a sleek black luxury car parked awkwardly. Its hazard lights were blinking, and beside it stood a man in a perfectly pressed suit. He looked restless, pacing back and forth, checking his phone, and then staring helplessly at the car. The expensive vehicle stood in sharp contrast to the lonely road, and the man looked completely out of place. Emily slowed down for a moment. She thought about driving past. After all, she was tired, and she had responsibilities waiting for her at home. Most people would probably just keep going, assuming the man could call for help. But something inside her told her to stop. Maybe it was her nature, or maybe it was the memory of the times she herself had been stranded on the road, wishing someone would offer help. She couldn't just ignore him. She pulled her car over a few steps ahead and got out. The man turned, surprised, to see her. For a second, he seemed almost embarrassed that a stranger, especially a woman, had stopped to check on him. Emily gave him a polite smile and asked if everything was all right. The man ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "My car just died on me," he admitted, glancing at the shiny vehicle as if it had betrayed him. "I was on my way to an important meeting. I tried calling roadside assistance, but they said it might take hours. I don't know what else to do." His voice carried a mix of impatience and helplessness. Emily looked at him closely. He seemed wealthy. His suit alone probably cost more than her monthly salary. Yet, despite his expensive clothes and fancy car, he looked completely powerless. In that moment, she realized that money didn't solve everything, especially not a broken-down car on a lonely road. "Do you mind if I take a look?" Emily asked gently. The man blinked, as if surprised that she would even offer. "You?" he asked, almost without thinking. Then he quickly shook his head. "I don't mean to sound rude, but do you know about cars?" Emily gave a small laugh. "I'm not an expert, but I've had my share of car troubles." "When you don't have anyone else to rely on, you learn a few things," she said with quiet confidence. The man hesitated, then nodded, stepping aside. Emily rolled up her sleeves and leaned under the hood of the car. She checked the battery connections, the oil, and the small things that sometimes go wrong. As she worked, she could feel the man's eyes on her, curious and a little doubtful. "Bye." "The way, I'm Emily," she said, without looking up. He paused, then replied, "Anderson." "Mr. Anderson." His tone was firm, the way someone used to respect and formality might speak. Emily smiled slightly at his answer, but didn't comment. She was focused on the car. Within a few minutes, she had spotted something loose and adjusted it carefully. It wasn't a permanent fix, but it might just be enough to get the engine running again. She straightened up and wiped her hands on a small cloth she carried in her car. "Try starting it now," she said. Mr. Anderson slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and to his surprise, the engine roared back to life. Relief washed over his face, and he quickly stepped out of the car. "I can't believe it," he said, almost laughing. "You actually fixed it. I had no idea what to do." Emily shrugged modestly. "Sometimes it's just the small things." "You were lucky it wasn't anything serious." Mr. Anderson studied her for a moment. He wasn't used to being in situations where he needed help from strangers, let alone from someone like her, an ordinary woman in simple clothes who had stopped her own journey to help him. Something about her calmness and quiet strength struck him. "Thank you," he said sincerely. Really? I don't know how to repay you. Emily shook her head. You don't need to. I just did what anyone should do. She gave him another polite smile, already turning back toward her own car. As she walked away, Mr. Anderson's eyes fell on her hand. That's when he noticed the ring glinting softly on her finger. He didn't mention it, not yet, but something about it made him curious. It was a simple band, not flashy, not new, but it carried a weight. A story he couldn't yet understand. For now, all he could do was watch her drive off, leaving him with a repaired car and a mind full of unexpected thoughts. Asterisk, the engine hummed softly. And Mr. Anderson stood in disbelief. A man who had built companies, made millions, and signed deals worth fortunes could not fix a simple car problem. Yet a single mom with no wealth or status had done it within minutes. For a moment, he simply stared at the road, trying to process what had just happened. Emily, meanwhile, was about to step into her modest little car when she heard his voice again. Wait. Please, don't go yet. She turned around, a little surprised. Is something wrong? Mr. Anderson shook his head. No. Everything's fine now. It's just, I don't understand. You didn't even hesitate to stop. Why? Emily tilted her head, a gentle smile forming on her lips. Because you looked like you needed help? Isn't that enough of a reason? Her words were simple, yet they carried a weight that Mr. Anderson wasn't used to. In his world, people rarely did anything without expecting something in return. Deals, contracts, partnerships, everything had a price. But here she was, someone who had nothing to gain, yet still chose to help. You don't know who I am, he said slowly, almost testing her. I don't need to. Emily replied softly. You were stranded, and I knew I could help. That's all that mattered. For the first time in a long while, Mr. Anderson felt speechless. He realized he hadn't met someone this genuine in years. They stood there for a moment in the fading light. Two very different people from two very different worlds, connected by nothing but chance and kindness. Emily broke the silence with a light laugh. Honestly, I've been in your shoes before. My car has broken down more times than I can count. When you're a mom and you can't afford roadside services, you'll learn a little about engines, tires, and batteries. Otherwise, you're stuck forever waiting for help that never comes. Mr. Anderson nodded, listening more carefully now. Her voice was calm, but beneath it, he could hear traces of struggle, years of pushing through difficulties, of figuring things out alone. And your son? He asked, curious. Does he ever help with the car? Emily's eyes softened, and for a second, a spark of warmth lit her tired face. He's still young, but he's always watching me. I think he sees me as his hero sometimes. She let out a small laugh, then shook her head. I just try my best. That's all a mother can do. Those words struck Mr. Anderson deeply. He thought about his own life, big mansions, endless business meetings, glamorous parties, but strangely empty halls. He had no children, no family waiting for him at home. Success had given him wealth, but not the simple joy this woman seemed to carry in her heart. Emily, he said suddenly, trying her name on his lips as if it were something rare. I don't think I've ever met someone quite like you. Emily blinked, slightly amused. I'm just an ordinary woman. Believe me, there's nothing special. But Mr. Anderson shook his head. No. Ordinary people don't stop for strangers anymore. Ordinary people don't put others before themselves. You could have kept driving, but you didn't. Emily shrugged, brushing off his compliment. She had no desire to be praised for something she believed was simply right. But inside, she felt a quiet pride. Not many people noticed her or acknowledged her efforts. To be seen, truly seen for even a moment, felt strange, almost uncomfortable, yet good. Mr. Anderson took out his wallet. At least let me pay you for your time, he offered. I can't just let you walk away after this. Her face grew. Firm. No, she said quickly. That's not why I helped you. Keep your money, please. He was stunned. Nobody ever said no to him. People always accepted his money, his gifts, his offers. Yet she rejected it without hesitation, as if the idea of being paid for kindness was insulting. Then why? He asked again, almost desperate to understand. Because someday, Emily said gently, I might be the one standing on the side of the road again, and I'll hope that someone will stop for me. That's how life works. You give when you can, and sometimes it comes back to you when you need it the most. Her words lingered in the cool evening air. They weren't poetic or polished, but they carried a truth that money couldn't buy. Mr. Anderson looked at her differently now. Not as a stranger who happened to fix his car, but as someone who had. Reminded him of something he had long forgotten, that kindness for its own sake still existed. Emily stepped closer, making sure the engine was running smoothly before she finally prepared to leave. Your car should be fine now. Just get it checked soon so it doesn't happen again, she advised, her tone practical but caring. Like a mother speaking to a stubborn child, he nodded, still lost in thought. Emily, he said quietly, I won't forget this. I promise. You. She gave him one last smile, simple and genuine, then returned to her little car. The contrast between their vehicles was almost symbolic, the powerful, sleek luxury machine and the small, worn-out car that had carried her through countless struggles as she drove off. The sound of her modest engine fading into the distance. Mr. Anderson stood by his car, still stunned by what had just happened. For years, he had believed money could solve every problem. Yet in that moment, on that lonely road, it wasn't his fortune that saved him. It was the kindness of a single mom who had nothing but chose to give anyway. And as her taillights disappeared into the night, he realized something else. Sometimes, the richest lessons in life come from the most unexpected people. The road had grown quieter as evening crept in, and a cool breeze brushed through the trees. Mr. Anderson remained standing near his car, watching the fading red glow of Emily's taillights vanish into the horizon. He should have gotten back into his luxury vehicle, continued his journey, and put this strange incident behind him. That was what he normally did, move forward, never looking back. But for some reason, his thoughts refused to leave the woman who had just walked into his life for the briefest moment and left a mark he couldn't quite explain. He finally slid into his driver's seat and sat there for a while, staring at the dashboard. The engine purred smoothly, thanks to Emily's quick fix. Yet, instead of relief, he felt something unexpected, a sense of emptiness. Why had her kindness affected him so much? Why did her simple words, "You give when you can," echo louder in his heart than any boardroom applause or congratulatory speech he had ever received? When he finally started driving again, the nightlights of the city were already twinkling in the distance. His thoughts wandered back to her. He tried to imagine her life, a modest home, a small child waiting for her, and long days filled with work that probably didn't pay enough. Yet, despite everything, she carried herself with quiet strength. She didn't complain, she didn't demand. She simply gave. The next morning, Emily went about her routine as usual. She woke up early to prepare breakfast for her son, Daniel. The little boy, no more than 8 years old, looked at his mother with admiration as she placed a plate of toast and eggs before him. "Mom, you look tired," he said softly. Emily smiled, brushing his hair back. "I'm always tired, sweetheart. That's what moms do. But don't worry, I'm happy." She didn't tell him about the man she had helped the previous night, Tia. It was just another act of kindness, nothing extraordinary. But in another part of the city, Mr. Anderson couldn't stop thinking about her. He had meetings to attend, contracts to review, decisions to make. But his mind kept drifting back to the image of that ordinary woman who seemed to carry extraordinary strength. In his world, people surrounded him for his wealth, his power, his name, yet she hadn't cared about any of it. In fact, she hadn't even known who he was. For once, he had been treated like a regular man, vulnerable and stranded. And she had stepped in without hesitation. Later that week, fate played its hand again. Mr. Anderson was attending a charity event at a local community center. He had been invited by one of his business partners, but hadn't planned to stay long. Usually, these events were just another opportunity for networking and polished conversations. But as he entered the crowded hall, his eyes caught something familiar. There she was, Amelia, standing near a table, helping arrange food trays for the children and families gathered there. She wore no expensive dress, no makeup to impress, just a simple blouse and jeans. Yet, she radiated a quiet beauty, the kind that couldn't be bought or manufactured. For a moment, he wondered if she would recognize him. He approached slowly, almost nervously, which was unusual for a man who negotiated million-dollar deals without blinking. "Emily," he said gently, when he was close enough. She turned, startled, and her eyes widened slightly. "Mr. Anderson." He gave a small smile. "I didn't expect to see you here." Emily tilted her head, equally surprised. "I could say the same. What are you doing at a community fundraiser?" He chuckled softly, almost embarrassed. "Honestly, I was dragged here by a friend. I don't usually attend things like this." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Well, maybe you should. It's good for people like you." "People like me?" he asked, amused. "You know," she said with a little shrug. "People who have more than enough. It reminds you that others out there are struggling." Her words weren't meant to sting, but they landed with surprising force. Mr. Anderson felt a rush of humility. She was right. In his wealth, he often forgot what life was like for those who lived paycheck to paycheck. "Scraping by, I guess I needed that reminder," he admitted. As the evening went on, they found themselves talking more. At first, it was small talk about the fundraiser and the children playing nearby. But gradually, the conversation deepened. Emily shared bits of her life, how she had lost her husband years ago, how she worked 2 jobs to provide for Daniel, how every day was a balancing act between exhaustion and hope. Mr. Anderson listened, truly listened, in a way he hadn't done with anyone in years. For once, the conversation wasn't about profits, stocks, or investments. It was about life. Real, raw, ordinary life. And strangely, he found himself drawn to it. He told her a little about himself, too, though carefully. He didn't boast about his fortune or his empire. Instead, he spoke about the loneliness that often haunted him. The emptiness of going home to a massive house with no one waiting inside. Emily listened with quiet understanding. She didn't pity him, nor did she envy him. She simply listened, as if his feelings mattered just as much as hers. By the end of the night, something had shifted between them. They were no longer just strangers who had met on a roadside. They were 2 people from opposite worlds who had found an unlikely connection, one that went beyond wealth, beyond status, beyond appearances, as Emily prepared to leave with her son. Mr. Anderson stopped her for a moment. "Emily, I hope this isn't the last time we talk." She looked at him for a long moment before smiling softly. "That depends, Mr. Anderson. People like us, we don't usually cross paths twice. But maybe fate has other plans." Her words lingered with him long after she was gone. And for the first time in years, Mr. Anderson found himself hoping fate would bring their paths together again. Asterisk, the evening at the community fundraiser had ended, but the memory of Emily lingered. In Mr. Anderson's thoughts, her honesty, her strength, and her quiet dignity had left an impression that not even his wealth or business accomplishments could overshadow. He drove home that night, but his mind was not on numbers or contracts. It was on her. Days later, their paths crossed again, though in a way neither of them expected. Emily was walking home from the grocery store, her son skipping cheerfully at her side, when a familiar car pulled up near the curb. It was sleek and polished, but this time it wasn't broken. The window rolled down. And there he was, Mr. Anderson, smiling faintly. "Need a ride?" he asked, almost shyly. Emily hesitated. She wasn't used to men like him showing up in her ordinary world. "I think we're fine," she said. "It's not far." But Daniel's eyes lit up at the shiny car. "Mom, please. Just this once." Emily sighed, giving in, and soon they were seated inside. The leather seats were soft, the scent of luxury surrounding them, but Emily remained grounded, treating the ride as casually as if she were in a cab. As they drove, Mr. Anderson glanced at her, hands on her lap. That's when he saw it again, the ring. The same simple, worn wedding band that had caught his eye on the roadside that first night. It wasn't glittering with diamonds or crafted from expensive metal, but it had a quiet, powerful presence. "Emily," he began carefully, "may I ask you something?" She looked at him, curious. "Go ahead." "That ring. You still wear it," he said softly. "But you told me you lost your husband. Why do you still keep it on?" Emily's hand, instinctively, brushed against the band, as if protecting it. Her eyes softened, filled with memories. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then, with a small sigh, she spoke. "This ring," she said slowly, "isn't just jewelry. It's a part of me. My husband gave it to me when we promised to build a life together. Even though he's gone, the promise stays. I wear it to remind myself that love was real, that it happened to me once, and it keeps me strong when life feels too heavy." Her voice wavered slightly, but she didn't break. She had learned to carry her pain with grace, to fold it into her strength. Mr. Anderson felt something stir in his chest. In his world, rings were often symbols of deals, expensive gifts exchanged without depth, flashy displays of status. But Emily's simple band, scratched and aged, carried more meaning than all the diamonds he had ever seen. It spoke of loyalty, sacrifice, and enduring love. Daniel, sitting in the back, leaned forward. "Mom says Dad is in heaven, but he still watches over us," the boy said innocently. "She says he'd be proud if he saw how hard she works." Mr. Anderson's throat tightened. He wasn't sure what to say. For years, he had surrounded himself with wealth, but this boy's words, simple and pure, revealed a richness he had never known. "You must have loved him very much," Mr. Anderson finally said. His voice quiet, Emily nodded, her eyes distant. "With all my heart. Even though life forced me to walk alone, I carry that love with me every day. It reminds me that I'm never truly alone." Silence filled the car, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy with unspoken feelings, with truths that didn't need more words. Mr. Anderson glanced at her again, noticing how the ring seemed almost like a shield, protecting her from the loneliness of the world. He wanted to say something comforting, something meaningful, but instead he just whispered, "You're stronger than most people I've ever met." Emily smiled faintly. Strength isn't something you choose. Life gives it to you when you have no other option. Those words stayed with him long after he dropped them off at their small home. He watched as Emily and her son disappeared inside, the warm yellow light of their modest house spilling out into the night. He thought about the contrast, her simple life and his mansion filled with silence. For the first time, he envied someone. Not for their wealth, but for their love, their memories, their strength. That night, lying in his king-size bed, Mr. Anderson found himself staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of Emily's story. The ring wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a story carved in gold. A love story that didn't end with death, but lived on in her heart. He realized something else to Millie wasn't just surviving. She was teaching her son, through her actions, what true love and resilience meant. She was passing on a legacy far greater than money. Days passed, then their paths crossed more often. Mr. Anderson found excuses to check in, to offer small gestures of help, though Emily often refused. But every time he saw that ring, it reminded him of the gap in his own life, the lack of someone to wear a ring for him. The lack of a story to hold on to. One evening, as they sat on a park bench watching Daniel play, Mr. Anderson asked, "Don't you ever think of moving on, of finding love again?" Emily looked at him, her expression calm but firm. Love isn't something you replace like furniture. When it's real, it stays with you forever. Maybe someday life will surprise me again, but until then, I'm not searching. My heart is already full with memories, with my son, with the love I carry. Her words struck him harder than he expected. He realized that the ring wasn't about clinging to the past hit, was about honoring it. Emily wasn't trapped by her grief. She was strengthened by it, and in that moment, as the sunlight caught the faint shine of her wedding band, Mr. Anderson understood why that ring fascinated him so much. It wasn't the metal, it was the story. It was the proof that true love existed on that it could survive even the cruel hand of fate. Asterisk. The park was quiet, except for the laughter of children playing in the distance. Emily and Mr. Anderson sat on the worn wooden bench, watching Daniel chase after a ball with other kids his age. The golden glow of the setting sun cast soft light across the playground, painting everything in warmth. Mr. Anderson couldn't help but notice the way Emily's eyes followed her son, every smile, every stumble, every burst of laughter. She looked at him with pride, but also with something heavier, a weight she carried silently. He could see it in the lines around her eyes, in the stillness of her hands resting on her lap. "Emily," T said gently, breaking the silence. "Can I ask you something personal?" She turned her gaze from her son to him. "You ask a lot of personal things, Mr. Anderson," she replied with a small smile. He chuckled softly. "Maybe, but there's something about you that makes me want to understand. You've been through so much, haven't you?" Emily didn't answer right away. She watched Daniel again, and for a moment, Mr. Anderson thought she might ignore the question. But then, with a quiet sigh, she began to speak. "Yes," she said softly. "More than I ever thought I could survive." Her fingers brushed over the wedding ring, turning it slowly. "My husband's name was Michael. He wasn't rich. He wasn't powerful. But he was everything to me. We met when I was still in college, working part-time just to keep myself afloat. He had nothing but dreams in his pockets, and yet he made me feel like I was the luckiest girl alive." Her voice softened, carrying warmth and sorrow in equal measure. "We built our life slowly, brick by brick. There were nights when we had nothing but noodles to eat, and mornings when we counted every coin just to afford the bus fare. But we had love, and for me, that was enough." Mr. Anderson listened intently, his chest tightening. He wasn't used to hearing love described this way, without the shine of wealth, without the polish of status. Just raw, real devotion. "When Daniel was born," Emily continued, her smile faint but wistful, "Michael promised me he'd give us the world. He worked long hours, sometimes taking 2 jobs at once. I told him we didn't need much, but he wanted to give us more. He was stubborn that way." Her voice faltered, and for a moment she grew quiet. Mr. Anderson waited patiently, sensing the heaviness of what was coming. One night, Emily whispered, her eyes clouding with memory, "He didn't come home." A phone call woke me. They told me there had been an accident. He had taken an extra shift to cover hospital bills for his mother, and he never made it back. Her words trembled, but she held herself steady. Years of carrying the pain had taught her not to break. When she spoke of it. Still, her hand clutched the ring tighter, as if drawing strength from the memory it held. I remember standing there, holding Daniel in my arms and feeling like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I wanted to collapse, to disappear. But then I looked at my son's face, and I knew I didn't have the choice to fall apart. From that moment, it was just me. Me against the world. Mr. Anderson's throat tightened. He tried to imagine her at that moment a young widow with a baby, facing life alone. The thought shook him more than he expected. Emily continued, her voice steady now. I sold almost everything we had to pay the debts. I worked day and night, sometimes skipping meals so my child wouldn't have to. I learned how to fix things, how to stretch every dollar, how to survive when the world gives you no mercy. Every sacrifice I made was for him, for Daniel. Her eyes glistened as she turned to look at her son again. And you know what? I don't regret a single thing, because every struggle taught me something. It made me stronger. It made me realize that love isn't proven by words. It's proven by sacrifice. Michael gave his life working for us, and I carry that with me. That's why I keep this ring, to remind me of the love and sacrifices that built the life I have now, even if it's not perfect. The playground sounds seemed distant now. Mr. Anderson sat in silence, overwhelmed by her story. He had seen people fight over money, betray one another for power, abandon friends for success. But here was a woman who had given everything, endured everything, and never once complained. Emily, he said finally, his voice low, I don't think I've ever met anyone as strong as you. You've lived through what most people wouldn't survive. Emily smiled faintly, though her eyes were damp. Strength isn't something I wanted. Life gave it to me because I didn't have another choice. But if my son can grow up seeing that strength, maybe he'll learn how to be brave too. Her words cut deep into him. For years, Mr. Anderson had measured strength in deals closed, risks taken, fortunes gained. But here, sitting on a park bench with a woman who owned almost nothing, he realized he had been wrong all along. True strength wasn't loud or glamorous. It was quiet, steady. A mother's strength. Daniel came running up then, his cheeks flushed from play. Mom, did you see me? I scored a goal, he exclaimed proudly. Emily laughed, wiping her eyes quickly. Before her son noticed, Yes, sweetheart, I saw. You were amazing. Mr. Anderson watched the exchange with a strange ache in his chest. He suddenly longed for something he had never truly known, a family. A love so pure it didn't need money to survive, as the boy tugged Emily's hand. Asking for ice cream on the way home, Mr. Anderson realized something profound. This small family, this simple woman, had more wealth and love and sacrifice than he had ever accumulated in his empire of riches. And though he didn't say it out loud, deep inside, he knew her story had changed him forever. The days following their conversation in the park weighed heavily on Mr. Anderson. He had listened to Emily's story, her sacrifices, her endless struggles, her quiet endurance, and something inside him had shifted. For years, he had believed gratitude was shown with money, expensive gifts, or grand gestures. But Emily had refused all of that. She didn't want his wealth. She didn't want his favors. And yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that he owed her something far greater than he could ever give. The next evening, Mr. Anderson found himself in his office, staring at his desk piled with documents. Contracts, numbers, and deals, all the things that once consumed his mind, suddenly felt hollow. His pen hovered above a checkbook, an idea forming. What if he gave Emily a large sum of money? Enough to clear her debts, enough to give her son a better future. It was the logical thing to do. It was the way he had always solved problems, by paying them away. But as quickly as the thought came, another followed. the memory of Emily's steady voice on the roadside, refusing his offer. "That's not why I helped you. Please, keep your money." He set the pen down, frustrated. For the first time, his wealth felt useless. A few days later, he drove by Emily's neighborhood. It was modest small houses lined the street. Children, playing on cracked sidewalks, laundry hanging on lines between trees. He spotted her outside, carrying groceries, while Daniel skipped along beside her. Without thinking, he pulled over. "Emily," he called out. Stepping from the car, she looked surprised, but her expression quickly softened into a polite smile. "Mr. Anderson, twice in 1 week sounding to think you're following us." He laughed, though there was a truth in her words. "Maybe I am. Do you need help with those bags?" "I've carried heavier," she said lightly, though her arms were straining. Before she could argue, he took the bags from her hands. Inside her small but tidy home, Mr. Anderson noticed the simplicity of her life. The furniture was worn, the walls painted with faded colors, but everything was neat, filled with warmth and care. Family photos hung in frames, Emily with her late husband, a younger Daniel in her arms, and snapshots of birthdays marked with homemade cakes. It was a house that spoke not of wealth, but of love. As Emily put groceries away, Daniel tugged on Mr. Anderson's sleeve. "Do you want to see my drawings?" the boy asked eagerly. "Of course," Mr. Anderson said, allowing himself to be led to a small table covered in papers. Crayon sketches of houses, cars, and smiling stick figures filled the surface. In almost every drawing, there was a tall figure holding hands with a smaller one. "That's me and Mom," Daniel explained proudly. "She's always with me, no matter what." Mr. Anderson's chest tightened. The boy's words were so simple, yet they carried the weight of all Emily had endured. Later that evening, when Emily poured him a cup of tea, Mr. Anderson tried again. "Emily, I've been thinking. You've given me something I can't put into words. You reminded me of what really matters. I can't let that go without doing something for you in return." Emily shook her head firmly. "You don't owe me anything. I helped you because I wanted to, not because I expected repayment." "But there must be something you need," he insisted, leaning forward earnestly. "Your home, your sons' future, your own dreams. Surely there's something I can do." She looked at him for a long moment before answering softly. "Mr. Anderson, do you know why I said no that first night? 'Cause not everything can be measured in money. My life has taught me that gratitude isn't about gifts or rewards, it's about the heart. You thanked me that night with your words, and that was enough." Her answer silenced him. He had never met anyone who truly believed that. In his world, gratitude was always transactional. Yet Emily seemed to live by a different rule, one that unsettled him, but also inspired him. "But how do I show you what this means to me?" he asked quietly. "By remembering it," she said simply. "By letting it change you." Her words struck him deeper than he could explain. Gratitude wasn't about giving back in the same measure. It was about carrying the lesson forward. Daniel came running into the room then, holding out a crayon drawing he had just finished. "Look, Mom, I drew you, me, and Mr. Anderson." Emily blinked in surprise, then laughed softly as she took the paper. The picture showed 3 smiling figures standing side by side. Mr. Anderson's chest tightened again as he looked at it. In the innocent eyes of a child, he had already been welcomed as part of their little world. That night, when he left Emily's home, he didn't carry a check or a gift. He carried something far heavier, the realization that true gratitude isn't spoken with money or possessions, but with presence, with respect, and with the willingness to be changed. Driving back to his mansion, he passed through the gates. Of his vast estate, the house loomed large and grand, but instead of feeling proud, he felt the hollowness again. Rooms filled with expensive art, hallways lined with chandeliers, yet all of it seemed empty compared to the warmth of Emily's small home. As he lay awake in his oversized bed that night, Mr. Anderson realized that gratitude, in its truest form, had already been given to him. Emily had gifted him a glimpse into a world he had forgotten existed, a world where kindness was free, love was priceless, and strength came from sacrifice. And he promised himself, silently but firmly, that he would never forget it. The night stretched long and sleepless for Mr. Anderson. He lay in his wide, luxurious bed, the soft glow of the chandelier above casting faint patterns on the ceiling. Normally, after long days of business deals and endless meetings, he collapsed into this bed with relief. Tonight, however, it felt like a prison. The silence of his mansion was suffocating. The house was filled with everything money could buy. Yet it lacked the one thing that Emily's small, modest home had in abundance: warmth. Her words replayed in his mind. Gratitude isn't about gifts or rewards, it's about the heart. You thanked me that night with your words, and that was enough. Enough. It had been years since he had heard someone say that. In his world, nothing was ever enough. No matter how much money he earned, no matter how many investments succeeded, there was always more to chase, more to prove. But Emily, she lived in a world where even a little was enough. A warm home, a son's laughter, a simple ring on her finger, and for the first time, Mr. Anderson wondered if he had been chasing the wrong things all along. The next day, he found himself distracted in his meetings. His colleagues spoke of profits, mergers, and opportunities. Words that once energized him now felt empty, like hollow echoes in a large room. He nodded and signed papers, but his mind was far away, on a small kitchen table where a boy had proudly shown him crayon drawings, on a modest woman who had faced life's cruelties and still stood tall, carrying strength he couldn't comprehend. That evening, he made a decision. Instead of going home to his empty mansion, he drove toward Emily's neighborhood. He didn't announce himself. Something inside urged him to just be there. As he parked near her house, he saw Daniel outside, kicking a ball against the fence. The boy waved enthusiastically when he noticed him. "Mr. Anderson," he shouted, running over. "Come play." Mr. Anderson hesitated, glancing down at his polished shoes and tailored suit. He had never kicked a ball in years. In his world, games were played in boardrooms, not backyards. But the boy's eager face left him no choice. With a laugh that felt strangely freeing, he set aside his jacket and joined in. For nearly an hour, he ran, kicked, and stumbled awkwardly. But Daniel cheered for him as if he were a champion. By the end, both were out of breath, laughing uncontrollably. Emily stepped out onto the porch, watching with amusement. "I didn't think I'd ever see the great Mr. Anderson playing soccer with an 8-year-old, she teased. "Neither did I," he admitted, wiping sweat from his forehead. "But maybe this is the kind of meeting I've been missing." Her smile lingered on him, and for a moment, he felt something he hadn't in years alive. Later, as they sat together on the porch, sipping iced tea Emily had brought out, Mr. Anderson spoke quietly. "Emily, can I be honest? I've spent my whole life believing money was the answer to everything, that it gave me control, respect, power. But lately, it feels like all it's given me is emptiness." Emily tilted her head, listening carefully. He continued, his voice softer. "The other night, I went home to my mansion, and for the first time, I hated it. The silence, the emptiness. It's like living in a museum. Everything polished and perfect, but no life inside." Emily's gaze softened. "That's because homes aren't made of walls or furniture. They're made of people, of love. Without that, even the grandest house is just a cage." Her words struck him like truth often does, quiet, sharp, undeniable. I used to think strength meant winning. Battles in business, he admitted. But watching you, seeing how you've lived, I realize strength is something else entirely. It's raising a child alone. It's facing the world after losing the person you love and still finding a way to smile. It's saying no to money because you believe kindness has more value. That's real strength. Emily looked at him, her eyes calm but deep. You don't need to compare your life to mine, Mr. Anderson. We all have our own battles. But yours, he said earnestly, taught me more in weeks than I've learned in years. You showed me that wealth isn't about what you own. It's about what you give, what you carry in your heart. For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy but comforting. The cicadas buzzed in the evening air. Daniel's laughter drifted from inside the house. And Mr. Anderson felt something shift inside him. He wasn't sure if it was peace or longing, or simply the awakening of a truth he had ignored for too long. Emily, he said softly, almost as if speaking to himself. I think you've given me the greatest gift anyone ever could, a lesson I'll never forget. She shook her head gently. I didn't give you anything. You just opened your eyes. But to him, it was everything. That night, as he drove away, he realized his life had reached a turning point. Deals and dollars no longer seemed like victories. For the first time in years, he wanted something more, something real. And it wasn't in his bank accounts or business towers. It was in the small, ordinary moments. A child's laughter, a woman's quiet strength, the warmth of a home built. Not on money, but on love. He smiled to himself, gripping the steering wheel. Emily had saved more than his broken car that night on the roadside. She had saved a man who didn't even know he was broken. And as the city lights stretched before him, Mr. Anderson knew this truth with certainty. He would never see life the same way again. Weeks passed, and life quietly settled into a rhythm neither Emily nor Mr. Anderson had expected. What began as a roadside encounter slowly became something more, a friendship built, not on wealth or need, but on respect and sincerity. Mr. Anderson found himself drawn to the simplicity of Emily's world. He stopped by the neighborhood often, sometimes with small groceries, sometimes with nothing more than his presence. Emily never asked for anything, but she never turned him away either. Daniel welcomed him with open arms every time, as though he had always belonged in their little circle. And yet, despite the growing closeness, there remained an invisible line between them, a ring of gold on Emily's finger. To her, it wasn't just jewelry. It was memory, sacrifice, and love all bound together. And to Mr. Anderson, it was a reminder that no matter how much he admired her, some spaces in her heart were sacred. One evening, Emily invited him to join them for dinner. Her table was small, the meal simple: roast chicken, potatoes, and fresh bread, but the warmth around it was unlike anything Mr. Anderson had known in his palatial dining room. Daniel chattered happily through most of the meal, his laughter filling the air like music. At one point, Daniel turned to Mr. Anderson with innocent curiosity. Do you live alone in your big house? The question hung in the air, heavier than the boy realized. Mr. Anderson hesitated, then nodded. Yes, Daniel, I live alone. Doesn't it get lonely? The boy asked. Mr. Anderson glanced at Emily, whose gentle eyes were watching him. He swallowed hard before answering. It's used to, but lately, not as much. Emily's lips curved into the faintest smile, and though no more was said, the silence that followed was full of meaning. After dinner, as they walked him out to his car, Mr. Anderson paused at the gate. The night was cool, and the stars were scattered brightly above. Emily stood there with her son's small hand tucked in hers, the faint porch light glowing behind her. The sight was so ordinary, yet so profoundly beautiful, that he wished he could capture it forever. Emily, he said softly, his voice almost hesitant. I don't know what the future holds, but I want you to know something. Meeting you It changed me. I'll never forget it." Her eyes searched his for a moment before she nodded. "And I won't forget either. Life has a strange way of putting people in our path at just the right moment. Maybe you needed help that night, but maybe I needed to be reminded too that kindness still matters." For a long moment, they stood there in the quiet, just looking at each other. Nothing more needed to be said. In the weeks that followed, Mr. Anderson found himself changing in ways his colleagues could hardly understand. He spent less time chasing endless business deals and more time investing in things that actually mattered. He donated quietly to community projects, not for recognition, but because he now understood what it meant to give. He began to visit schools, speaking not about wealth, but about resilience. Inspired by Emily's story, but above all, he carried the memory of her ring knit's quiet, unshakable meaning. It reminded him daily that love and sacrifice were stronger than money or power. Emily, on her side, continued her life much as before. She worked, she raised her son, she faced her struggles with strength. But there was a new lightness in her days. She had found an unexpected friend who had shown her that not all wealthy men were arrogant or cold. She had seen that even someone with everything could feel empty. And she had learned that sometimes giving kindness not only helps others, it heals you too. And though they came from two different worlds, they had given each other something priceless. Years later, Mr. Anderson would often think back to that roadside moment, the flashing hazard lights, the frustration he had felt, and the woman who had walked toward him with nothing but courage and kindness. That memory became like a bookmark in the story of his life, a moment where everything turned. He would tell people, when they asked about his success or his philosophies, that the greatest lesson he ever learned wasn't from a boardroom or a business partner. It was from a single mom with a worn-out car and a stronger heart than anyone he had ever met. As for Emily, she sometimes sat on her porch at night, Daniel asleep inside, and thought about how strange life was. One simple choice to stop her car and help a stranger had created a ripple that touched both their lives forever. She would touch her wedding ring and smile softly, knowing that Michael's memory had not only given her strength, but had guided her toward an encounter that changed someone else's path. And so, the story never truly ended. Their lives went on separate, yet intertwined by an unforgettable moment on a lonely road. A single act of kindness had bridged the gap between two worlds, one built on money, the other on sacrifice. Neither of them would forget it. For Emily, it was proof that kindness was never wasted. For Mr. Anderson, it was proof that even the richest man could be saved not by wealth, but by the quiet strength of an ordinary woman. And every time Emily's ring caught the light, it reminded them both, love never truly ends, it only changes form, guiding us toward the people and lessons we are meant to find.